Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Michou Olivera, and I have the honor and pleasure of presenting to you today Relational Mycology, Mezzodosing, and Intuitive Integration, Personalization and Sovereignty, and Self-Trust in Psilocybin Practice. This uh, section of a larger framework is the life's work of mine these last 6 years, and it is a very uh, deep and personal pleasure, honor, joy to have had a lot of experiences that have culminated in the information that I'm about to share with you today. So thank you again for joining, and I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Um, I'm also the founder of Michou Olivera Psychedelic Guidance and Integration, and my recent framework is conscious flow integration, and the topics discussed today are going to be coming from that framework. These three questions are really foundational in this framework because it's asking some questions that over the last 6 years now, I have noticed a lot of really repeated patterns in some of these areas, and it feels really important to speak to them. So today, I'm going to go ahead and jump in a little bit here. For starters, what if the mushroom variety matters more than the potency alone? This is a question that I feel really speaks to the idea that high dose mushroom experiences are an answer. I've witnessed a lot of destabilization from them from people that I've been working with, and I have some really, I don't know, some interesting observations that I'm looking forward to sharing with you today from that. And what if the dose matters differently than we think? What if it's not about the high dose or even just a microdose? What if there's another dose amount that is actually offering a greater access to what is ready to be worked with or what is ready to be understood? Also, what if integration is where insight becomes meaning? And by this, I mean intuitive insight. And what I'm witnessing with myself on my own journey and also with the people that I've had the pleasure to work with is that when they're working with mushrooms, they're having intuition rise to the surface that they don't know how to engage. So, in my understanding, it felt necessary from an ethical place to really help people to navigate their intuition from mindfulness. So, these are another piece of framework that I'll be discussing a little bit further. And the path that really led me here was really not very glamorous, and it was actually quite painful. My life started with a lot of early childhood trauma, and as a result, it created a ton of anxiety for me. Being born female in a very masculine presentation was very challenging for me, so I had a lot of negative attention, had a lot of violence in my life, and that really led me to start coping with myself with alcohol and cannabis and pretty much whatever I could find that would numb me from the pain I was feeling that I did not know how to work with. I drank pretty much exclusively for 38 years and basically led me to having a lot of negative life challenges as a result. And I ended up being homeless in 2018 due to some shoulder injuries that I had a few months prior. And what happened was mushrooms re-entered my life. They basically allowed me to deep dive some areas of trauma that I wasn't looking to do. I was recreationally using them. And it basically caused an awakening, depersonalization, or a breakthrough, if you will. That experience really pivoted my life and allowed me to start to really unpack what was at work behind the scenes. And it led me to start understanding how I needed to face these pieces of opportunity, basically. I was shown so much that I didn't know what to do with. So integration for me became going out into nature, learning how to sit with the emotions that I was feeling, the intuition that was coming through. This put me on a path of service to myself and eventually mushrooms and eventually people. In 2018, after more than 30 years away, psilocybin mushrooms unexpectedly re-entered my life during a period of profound personal crisis, and I microdosed Golden Teacher monthly for 2 years. This was a really wild experience. Every month was a new adventure, a new experience, and I didn't have any community or support, so I really wasn't sure what I was even doing at that time, honestly. The experiences and insights didn't create lasting change for me, but integrating them did. And I would go to places, as you see here, this is my dog Chico, and just sit and contemplate what the mushrooms had shown me days before, and I couldn't really fathom what was happening. I didn't understand it, right? I didn't have any idea, but processing and trying to make meaning from what I was experiencing, and then my intuition coming through, pointing me in the direction of what I felt was truth finally, right? This was something that I felt was a guiding principle of how to really start my day and how to basically work with what was really challenging to face. And as I began supporting others with mushrooms, experiential patterns became really impossible to ignore. They were basically they were things that I was watching people have experiences with certain types of mushrooms, right? And these people were very, in some cases, similar backgrounds with maybe anxiety or maybe depression, but the way the mushrooms were working with them was patterned, right? And these people, some of them had experience, some of them had no experience, but the result of working with whatever type of mushroom at the time was patterned and similar across them, right? So right away, I started wondering, well, what makes one mushroom different from another? And as I started to grow my own, right, and I've now had the honor and privilege of cultivating 24 different mushroom varieties for the people that I've worked with these last 6 years. And I've witnessed a lot of very individual personality traits of these different mushrooms or earth medicines, you could say. And the psilocybin content may influence the intensity, but I don't believe, does it fully explain the experience you're having with the mushrooms, not just the potency, but the effect, the visuals, or the amount of conscious access that you're getting, or the somatic presence that you're feeling. These are, I believe, very unique. I believe that mushrooms have an individual personality trait, if you will. And when you're working with various ones, as in the top left corner is natalensis, or now okras, as they all call them. On the top left, those are Jedi. These mushrooms have very different feels, right? So right away, I was forced to really start to look at the bigger picture of not just people taking mushrooms and having benefits, but different effects are happening also to them, right? So these certain mushroom varieties were producing absolutely recurring patterns. These people were of all different ages, all different genders, all their experience levels, from 0 to high experience, but the effects of these mushrooms were essentially showing up the same way for all of them, right? So I started to really dive into how to show up for this in a way that would help people the most. And that was by essentially creating something called Relational Mycology, which is a relationship-centered approach to understanding and working with mushroom individuality and personal history. So essentially what I'm doing, what I found that was really helpful to people, was to listen to their background, was to understand what challenges they were coming from or what they were experiencing that was not optimal for them. And listening to where they were coming from was able to help me to understand what type of mushroom would be ideal for them. So by doing this, it allowed the person to work with mushrooms in a way that was, first of all, from harm reduction, so they're safer, right? If they're coming from anxiety history or trauma history, maybe they have complex PTSD, mushroom types are going to either exacerbate these or they're going to help them. So it became important to work with people, say, for example, who have anxiety or trauma histories, not with penis envy, right? And maybe with something, I like the natalensis variety because it has no somatic present or very low somatic body feel to it, right? So working with relational mycology is allowing people to have a little bit more understanding of the type of mushrooms that are available to them, how to choose, really. And this led me into something called mezzodosing, right? The lucid bridge between micro and macrodosing. Mezzodosing is allowing people to encounter psychedelic experience, right? With 1 to 2 grams, depending on the mushroom variety, right? And what it's doing is it's allowing them to have just enough access to their trauma or their belief systems or their fear or whatever the opportunities are from a place of observation rather than reactivity. So rather than microdosing where it's just a tiny little smaller dose where you're getting minimal sub-perceptual benefit, right? Or not like macrodosing where you're getting very consumed and in some cases, they're not able to really speak. Some of these experiences, microdosing is beneficial. Macrodosing is obviously for some people very, very incredibly beneficial. But mezzodosing is allowing people in the moment to begin integrating in while they're working with mushrooms, which is letting them have a lot more curiosity in their internal scape. It's allowing them to really contemplate some big things. Maybe they're working with grief, or maybe they're working with some sort of really traumatic experience from childhood that they've never been able to touch. I'm witnessing, from a personal standpoint, myself being able to have agency to work through mezzodose states with challenging material. And the people that I'm holding space for, I'm watching them be able to approach these things that they've never been able to face before with curiosity and with a lot more forgiveness or a lot more compassion than they would have if they're in the opposite states of either micro or macrodosing. So in this state, mezzodosing is allowing opportunity for integration right then, really. Usually within an hour or two in the experience. It's only really lasting for maybe 3 hours, 4 hours max anyway. But what was also occurring was the need for intuitive integration, because these people are connecting with very deep material from a psychedelically intuitive place, and it's something that they want to work with. So transforming insight into embodied knowing is something that we take with us, right? After the mushrooms are through our system and we've experienced what we've experienced, in the days following, we're still working with this intuitive insight, right? We're still integrating. So starting that in the mezzodose experience is profoundly helpful for people. And this is something that I feel really is an opportunity for a lot of people in this community that are doing this work or they're offering these services. I find integration waiting for the end is sometimes people are coming up with really meaningful material, meaningful experiences, meaningful history that is ready to be engaged, and this is a wonderful way. In my closing reflection here, I mean, really, relational mycology is inviting us to remain curious, sure, but also to look for nuance. When you're working with mushrooms and you have access to different varieties, start to pay attention to how each one is affecting and how each one is feeling. If you're able to listen and really pay attention to these nuances, working with different types of mushrooms becomes really beneficial depending on where you are in your life. If you're working with, I mean, really, the sky's the limit. They're all going to be beneficial to you, but how they're beneficial really starts to matter when you do have existing conditions like anxiety, or if you're working with things like SSRIs. Certain types of mushrooms are working through the SSRIs where you don't need to titrate off or down. You don't need to have a larger dose. There are varieties of mushrooms that are working with people who have medications that they've taken for very many years, and they're still having effects. They're still having full experiences with these medications safely. And I believe that mezzodosing really is going to be a dose amount that really speaks to a lot of people who maybe have microdosed for a while, maybe a few months or a few years, and they're feeling like they need to go further, but they're not ready for a macro experience yet. Mezzodosing is a wonderful place to also do this work on your own. You don't need someone with you with 1 gram or 2 grams unless you're fearful, right? But if you're working with somebody who maybe has sat with you for one mezzodosing experience to give you an understanding of what that medicine feels like at a little bit higher dose, more than likely you're able to do this on your own. It's nice for the weekend. The week following is really fantastic. In my experience, it's been really helpful. Rather than dosing throughout the week, mezzodosing allows me to have that experience maybe on a Saturday for a few hours, and then that next week I'm feeling really in myself in a really powerful and peaceful way, more mindful, more grateful, right? I feel mezzodosing really is a lot of beginning psychedelia that could go deeper, but it's really a safe place for people to work with this medicine with mushrooms that are maybe even more powerful, and they're not going to be consumed in a way that's threatening them or harming them further. Intuitive integration really is coming in to allow people a chance to really embody what they're coming across with intuition, with their insights. Mushrooms are very conscious. Working with this level of awareness is allowing people a lot of sovereignty. They're allowed to really trust themselves, listening to their inner voice, letting things come through, and then letting them have the courage to believe it, right, and to work with it. And I'm not talking about crazy ideas or, I need to quit my job right away, like not this type of stuff, but the understanding that, hey, this trauma is coming from this place and I can let that go now. I don't need to tell this story about what happened to me years ago because it's perpetuating my sadness or my grief or my depression or whatever it is. So intuitive integration really is something that is allowing people to work with themselves and not need somebody to tell them what the answers are, right? That's really, I feel like, what this is ultimately about, is leading people home to themselves so they can trust and be the answer, right? Be their own answer. And honestly, I really welcome dialogue and collaboration with so many different types of people. But for these projects, for this framework, researchers, clinicians, facilitators, integration practitioners, educators, and absolutely mycologists exploring individualized harm reduction in relationship-centered psychedelic psilocybin practice, you're always welcome to reach out. There's never enough conversations. There's never enough knowledge sharing. There's never enough community building. I think it's phenomenal to hear other people's stories of what they're working on and what they've discovered. If anyone feels anything I've mentioned today would be useful to you, you are absolutely welcome to reach out anytime, and I will happily share what I can for collaboration. Happily, will happily collaborate with any person who feels that this would be useful for them, honestly. Um, and I wanted to share really the deep gratitude. This just skims the surface of how much gratitude I have for all of these people. Really though, for PsychedelX and the organizers who created the space for these conversations, like deep bow of gratitude for that, because this is phenomenal to allow people to share what they're discovering and what they're coming in contact with as far as their realizations. Phenomenal, and thank you for that. To the many travelers who trusted me with their trauma, their fear, their grief, anxiety, depression, stories, and healing and growth. Seriously, thank you deeply for trusting me to be of service to you here. Really, really fantastic, though. I can't even say enough. And to the mycologists, the cultivators, the teachers who generously share their experiences and observations online and across social media, I could not have learned to grow the mushrooms that I grew. This is my 5th year of growing mushrooms for my clients, and I could not have done any of that without all of your help, honestly. And to the facilitators and integration practitioners, you are holding space for others with ethical care and with presence. Again, deep, deep, deep gratitude. The work you do, the work we do, is very, very powerful. And the mushrooms themselves for teaching me that I could stop running for myself and finally come home. Absolutely necessary and so definitely needed. And lastly, mushroom medicine often reveals what we have always known, but struggled to trust within ourselves. Find the courage to love yourself, trust yourself, forgive yourself, and walk your own path. The answers have always been within you, and you are right on time to meet them. And yes, these photographs were all taken by myself between 2019 and 2020. Thank you very much for listening, and reach out anytime.